problem isn't lack of knowledge. The average person likes to believe that if they think harder, they'll receive the answer to their problem. But if this were true, then the average person, the average overthinker, would solve all of their problems because they're thinking non-stop. They'll have the clarity, they'll have the direction. But Albert Einstein himself explained that the answer to a problem cannot exist on the same level of thinking. So in a sense, if we want to solve our problems, we need to rise to a higher level of thinking. Now that's interesting because Nikola Tesla said that he believes he is a receiver and that in the universe there is a center in which we all pull knowledge and inspiration and strength. That's interesting because he believed he was a receiver. So maybe the most successful people, they think less and that's why they're successful. Or they know how to think in a way that most people don't. I'm reading a book right now. And the book is called The Mystic Path to Cosmic Power. And the author, I believe his name is Joseph Murphy, he reiterates that infinite intelligence already has a solution to your problem, right? But it's our inability to hear the solution. Now, going back to what Nikola Tesla is saying, that we are receivers. So the problem can't be that you don't know enough. The problem has to be that you have a mental clutter. You're not an open channel to receive from infinite intelligence the solution to your problem. And so if we look to spirituality, to what world religions are all saying, in order to solve problems, what do they say? Be still, trust, surrender, pray, so on and so forth. Why are they saying for us to be still? There has to be a connection to being still in order to solve our problems. I know you guys see the whiteboard. We got a new whiteboard, guys. Alright. Okay. So, let's break it down, right? This is what religion is saying. Religion says, be still. It says, take no thought for your life. This is from Matthew 25. This verse, I want to add a verse here that says, this verse is Matthew 27. It's going to bother me if I don't know what it is. Okay, so it says, which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? Can add 1 cubit. You get it. Unto his stature. This is what they're saying. Be still, take no thought. Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? So they're saying don't think. This is what they're saying. Stop thinking. Stop thinking. But the only challenge here is, this isn't practical, right? You have bills, you have things you want to achieve. So how do you not think? Because realistically speaking, the average high achiever, they associate being still with laziness, right? You have big goals and big ambitions. You can't just be still. You have money to make. So this goes against our own logical thinking. But maybe that's the problem here. And in order for me to explain this, now I need to shift out of with the spiritual and religious into something more practical. So let me break this down, right? If we want to stop thinking, even if we are sleeping, we're thinking, right? Being still does not mean that we don't think. It means, to a sense, we rise above our thinking to where we become the observer and not the thinker. So, as in order to rise above our own thinking, we need to experience a level of enlightenment. Because in order to be still, in order to take no thought for your life, right? In order to solve your problems from a way that's outside of your own conscious thought, your own analytical mind, you need to rise above your thought. You need to be able to perceive that your thoughts are just thoughts. They're just floating ideas, and they're not really you. As in, you need to reach a level of enlightenment. And now, what would that do for your life? How is that going to help you? So now let's break that down. Questioning if I should wipe this off or not. Whatever. Okay. So we would have reached a level of enlightenment where we rise above thought. That would mean that we are shifting out of our conscious awareness, as in out of beta brainwave, analytical mind. Because it is our analytical mind that is always conscious, that is always logically looking for the answers to our problems, right? But we wouldn't be able to apply this in our day-to-day life if we didn't know the importance of it. And so that's what I'm trying to bridge here. I'm trying to bridge how, in a sense, we can look for the answer to our current block in both a psychological standpoint, what neuroscience is explaining, and both what traditions all around the world, spiritually, religiously, what they're all saying. Because in a way, they're saying something of a similar nature. They're all leading towards one point, and that is that you need to rise out of the analytical mind, right? Why? So that we can begin working with infinite intelligence, so we can receive clarity, so we can receive higher insight. So now I need to teach you guys a practical way on how to do this process so you can receive results. Okay, so for me to explain this, I'm going to use another verse. And this is from Philippians. And this one more or less says, kind of like, be anxious not, but in everything, pray and, I always forget this word, with thanksgiving, give your ask to God. Let's see what this one says. And supplication, with prayer and supplication. I'm going to say, prayer and supplication. Now, the reason I use this verse is because this is like an instruction, is what it feels like, on how to work with infinite intelligence, so that way we can think less and receive the ideas to solve our challenges in our life. And let me break this down so you guys have a better understanding. Well, be anxious not, right? Be anxious not. Or it says, be anxious for nothing. That's what it says. Be anxious for nothing. You get it, right? Be anxious for nothing means to rise out of worry. And the only way to rise out of worry, the first step here, is to rise out of analytical mind. The only way to rise out of your analytical mind is you need to be still, you need to relax. So we can say, relax. Okay, what does the second part of the verse say? But in everything, pray and supplication with thanksgiving. But in everything, so as in your everyday life, right? Pray and supplication. What does supplication mean? Supplication often refers to being humble, right? What does humble mean? Humble often refers to having a good ground, being moral, being just about something. As in, if you ask for something, don't ask for it to boast, to serve your ego. Do it because it feels right to you, right? So humble, right ground, right meaning, right? And in supplication with thanksgiving. Pray and in supplication. So the second step is to ask from a just place with thanksgiving. Now this is the key here, because this is how we work with God as an infinite intelligence. With thanksgiving, what do we do in thanksgiving? Well, we give appreciation for our family members, for the food, for the day, for the time, right? So gratitude, we express a level of gratitude to give your ask to God. And I'm going to leave the fourth part once I explain this. So shifting out of this what feels spiritual and mystical and into a more psychological explanation of how the subconscious mind works. So your subconscious mind is a mix of beliefs. It's a mix of strong emotions, traumatic experiences, tied with your own personality, who you believe you are. This is how your subconscious mind works. And so oftentimes what makes us pull away or push ourselves in a direction is a strong enough conviction, right? We believe that is a direction that we should take. As in, our self-worthiness is tied to that experience. This is how our subconscious mind operates. And so, maybe I should have wrote that down here, but this equation is explaining how to impress something upon your subconscious mind. And how do I know this? Because Think and Grow Rich, a book by Napoleon Hill. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs, people who are longing for success, read that book. It explains that you want to repeat ever so often when you wake up and before you go to sleep an affirmation with your end goal. But to start it off, invoking a great emotion of, I am so happy and grateful that I received so on and so forth X amount of money. So they are invoking the highest emotion, that which is of gratitude. And why? Because emotion is how our subconscious mind renders something to be of importance. Of importance. So if you are trying to solve something in your mind, right? And let me go back to this example before I lose track. How do we express what we want to our subconscious mind? In order for us to take that practical, to follow this, we need to follow the steps. One, we need to rise out of the analytical mind. How do we do that? We silence our mind. We be still, right? because the kingdom of heaven is within. That's what it says. So if the kingdom of heaven is within, then you need to relax, center yourself, and release all tensions. So that way, you can begin reaching into that higher brainwave state in which you can access your higher mind, the intuitive mind. And the only way for you to do that is you need to relax, right? Now, when you are in your meditative state, right, and you retreat and you unplug from your sense of self, your identity, now what you are able to do is put a mental picture on your mind of already solving your problem and asking yourself, if you were to solve that problem, right, what would happen that would shift you into a greater emotional experience? It's not that you're going to receive the money if you were to solve the problem. It's not. It's that you would solve a great block in your life. Maybe there's someone in the hospital that needs you, right? Maybe that money you can give back to a charity. Maybe you can give it to your mother. Maybe you can go see your mother. You haven't seen her in so many years. So if you were to imagine yourself now finally being able to see your mother for so many years, that's going to invoke a great level of emotion. And the greater that emotional stimulant, the more important, in a sense, you direct your subconscious mind, right? Out of every other thought you have, your subconscious mind now looks at that as being something we need to put our attention to. This is how you work with infinite intelligence, right? Because now you've asked following this equation. But now the fourth most important part to this is staying an open channel, being able to receive the ideas, the hunches, the direction that subconscious mind will now give towards you. And the only way for you to do that is you need to stay in flow. And this is often where people get stuck, because they try one time to work with their subconscious mind in some shape or form. Maybe they repeat affirmations, right? But they don't stay relaxed. They don't stay in flow. They still look at their problem and they're trying to solve it. Instead, what you should do is go for a walk, listen to some music, go for a massage, take a shower. This is going to help you release the anxiety, the tension that you have. So that way, the hunch, the idea, your subconscious mind can now work for you. Because it is in beta brainwave state you can't ever win. Right? Going back to Nikola Tesla, how he would receive, the ideas on how to solve the problems and invent the things that he wanted to invent. In the previous video, I explained he did a hypnagogic technique. Hypnagogia is where you're able to work with different levels of brainwave, different levels of consciousness in order to receive higher insights. So what he would do is, right before he would go into a deep sleep, he'll have something in his hands that if he were to drop, it would wake him up. So as soon as he would wake up, it's like he would cut himself in the middle of the dream. And that's where he's able to remember what he saw in the dream, the idea, the insight, and then he would apply it. This is one method in how he was able to work with infinite intelligence. Thinking less, but getting so much further. Because of what? He's working with all-knowing. He doesn't have to know. He doesn't need more knowledge. So this is the bridge between what feels spiritual and mystical to scientific. It's just how our brain works. When you're always overthinking and analyzing, you're never a right channel for a greater idea. It's often when we are the most relaxed that creators and thinkers and so on and so forth, they've expressed that's how they got their most greatest idea, when they weren't actively thinking about it. So this is how you would think less in order to know more.